Pluribus is kind of my favorite thing I've seen in a while. It's also a zombie show. Not exclusively, of course. We're playing with broad post-apocalyptic tropes, but also alien invasion and even some possible AI commentary, if unintentional. But the zombie tropes stand out, particularly in the first episode. The first episode is this phenomenal hook, and it feels like pretty familiar territory. The sudden outbreak, the world on fire, normal life violently interrupted by a virus that takes over everyone's minds, turning them into a brain-dead horde that destroys everything we know. With a single bite or kiss, you become one of them. Everyone except those few immune. Those whose biology, for reasons unknown, resists this humanity-eroding infection. They are what's left, the last relics of the world that was. But even by the end of the first episode, this hour of genre TV has already started morphing into something stranger and more subdued. It's the perfect anticlimax. We'll get to that anticlimax, but in order to do so, we first have to talk about zombies. Because Pluribus is a zombie show until it isn't. And then it actually still secretly is. So, what are zombies in fiction? They originate in Haitian voodoo, representing a fear of colonialism and the control of slave masters. In modern media, they tend to represent themes like loss of agency, mindlessness, and decay. And all of these themes are still intact in Pluribus. While the Hive aren't literal zombies, the show uses zombie tropes in its focus on agency and identity. So, how are the Pluribus Hive zombies? They're a horde with a shared goal. They operate slowly, not physically in this case, but by playing the long deception game. They consume humans, literally and mentally. You become one of them and you lose your identity. They're beholden to a biological imperative, so it's not personal. They invite decay. Not physical decay, but a slow species erosion as the hive refuses to feed itself. And there's also intellectual and creative decay as passion, opinion, and disagreement erode. But for every one of these, there's also a counter-argument. So how is the hive not zombies? Instead of brain-dead and feral, they're intelligent. Instead of monstrous, they're warm and polite. Rather than reanimated corpses, they are physically alive. And maybe most significantly, instead of destroying society, they actually maintain it. Or, more accurately, transform it. So, Pluribus's first episode uses these familiar tropes to set up the zombie apocalypse show we expect. Think about the tone of this episode in comparison to the rest of the show. It's unnerving, it's bleak, and it's incredibly effective horror. We get this huge buildup of tension. Carol peeling away in her car, blocking her windows, arming herself with golf clubs, ready to fight. But then, that inevitable confrontation never happens. Not in the way that we or she expect. The hive is concerned for her?
We just want to help, Carol.
And then it's episode 2. And it's like we're in another show entirely.
I've seen this movie. We've all seen this movie.
It's the perfect anticlimax. This immediate, disquieting subversion of expectations. And in a way that actually makes it much worse. Because these zombies aren't chasing you. In fact, they don't seem hostile at all. They're smiling and bringing you food. Offering you space, even, if that's what you want. And somehow, that's worse. Because the scary thing has still happened. And despite their demeanor, they're still working towards Carol's greatest fear.
So we can fix it. So you can join us.
Making her one of them. So Carol is still being hunted. Just gently. Quietly. And if you think about it, it fits. The horror of the zombie is precisely its slowness. You can hold the horde back, but never forever. And similarly, the Hive also moves slowly, almost bureaucratically.
How long do I have left before you turn me into a worker bee?
We're working round the clock.
And that's the tension of this anticlimax. Carol and the audience knowing that something is coming for her and having to just wait.
Sooner or later, I'm fucked.
I've seen complaints about the show's pacing, which I didn't even consider until I got online. It's only 9 episodes, and I had a blast the entire time. More importantly, though, whether or not it's your personal taste, the waiting is the point. Because with this, the show keeps us and Carol stuck in the worst part of fear. Anticipation. Once the scary thing comes, you can scream. But while you wait, all you can do is wonder when it's going to get you, how it's going to get you. That's often the worst part. The antidote to anxiety is action. But here, Carol's denied that catharsis. So this creates the most uncomfortable thing: anxiety with no outlet. This is the core of what makes the anticlimax. Pluribus challenges our sense of fear and horror, and then spends the rest of the season slowly building it back up. And it's sharpened by the show's use of emotional contradiction. Because what's happening to Carol as she waits? The thing that took the world from her is also suddenly her lifeline. Let's put ourselves in her shoes. Not 24 hours ago, she experienced an unbelievably horrifying day which culminated in the death of her wife. And while still reckoning with this, she's faced with a bizarre dissonance. The thing she's furious at is now almost obnoxiously nice and concerned with her well-being. They have the audacity almost to position themselves as a caretaker.
If you don't mind us saying, maybe you could slow down and take a break.
Having killed Helen, the Hive helps Carol dig her grave. The Hive helps her, and she feels, unbelievably, gratitude? Concern for them? It feels almost perverse. Does that make her a traitor? To everyone who died? To the human race? To Helen? Carol has all this grief and rage, and now a very hard time directing it anywhere, emotionally and also practically. Because she can't express anger towards the Hive, or it'll kill them. And just like the Hive is affected by Carol's anger, Carol is affected by their pain. Meaning that if Carol hopes to unhive people, which we discover is possible, she's essentially forced to operate on their terms. Quiet, bureaucratic. So on top of the anxiety with no outlet, now Carol can't even cleanly see or treat the Hive as the enemy anymore. And it goes further than this. At first, there's almost a relief at not being met with aggressive monsters. This feels like an anticlimax. We were expecting something monstrous and we're met with something that feels human. But this actually warps into something more insidious. The Hive seems almost enthusiastically transparent, and Carol deduces that they can't lie. But this doesn't necessarily make them honest either, because this intelligence actually warps into something more insidious. They hide behind technicalities, like legal fine print or lying by omission.
He reminded me that technically what they said was that they would prefer to be vegetarian.
Oh, great. So all the fucking lawyers in the world survived.
Their claim of being unable to cause deliberate harm, for example, immediately poses contradictions. For one, we see them cause psychological harm, namely leaving Carol in complete isolation for weeks. For social creatures like us, extended isolation like this is torture, and the Hive would undoubtedly know this. We could even just go back to the very start. The Hive's creation itself came about through extreme violence. Zosha's dialogue also reveals that this was the result of the Hive's deliberate calculation.
We had to accelerate the process.
Indirect violence is still violence. And finally, there's that half-truth that haunts every episode, claiming
Your life is your own.
undercut by trying to change Carol anyway. This tells us two things. First, that concern for her distress is overridden by their biological imperative, and second, that they can deceive, and in fact, do it very well. Think about how differently the Hive is portrayed in episode 1 versus the rest of the show. Everything in episode 1 is pure horror. The score, the framing. The Hive here is unambiguously predatory, manipulative. And their actions here are meant to ick us out in a really specific way. Licking donuts, tricking people, and especially kissing. This feels not just scary, but violating. They spread via non-consensual touch, via something that we usually think of as an act of love. Then think about how jarringly we see this shift to a Hive almost fixated on consent. But we just saw that for billions of people, they didn't ask because they knew the answer would be no. And they try to do this with Carol. It's only after they realize they can't that we get the
Your life is your own.
because they're temporarily stuck. So when the Hive says that they can't change Carol without her consent, this doesn't erase the tension. And it's emphasized by the episode itself. In basically consecutive scenes, we have first an emphasis on how they focus on technicalities,
Oh, great. So all the fucking lawyers in the world survived.
and then the claim to respect her wishes. And in some ways, this pretense of respect and honor is almost worse. It's almost worse that they say, no, we won't take cells from your body, and then use a loophole to take them from her eggs. They know the spirit of what Carol is asking.
I am officially going on record that I do not consent.
It's so much slimier. You'd almost prefer that they just own up to it and take it by force. Combined with this lawyerly instinct is the Hive's emotional intelligence. Their empathy, humor, curiosity feels instantly disarming. But of course, this also becomes dangerous. The Hive creates elaborate puppet theater, wearing a costume of the world they consumed, and dangle it in front of people like an anglerfish. The best parts of being human reduced to a hunting tactic. The scene where Zosha is first sent to Carol is unbelievably eerie. It seems like an earnest attempt at connection, but we also see how minutely calculated it was. The show pulls back the curtain to reveal behind the scenes what Carol wasn't privy to. Having her flown in across the globe, the styling team, like she's an actor stepping into a role. Sure, in part to keep her comfortable, but we also know there are ulterior motives. Then, similar to digging Helen's grave after causing her death, after isolating Carol, the Hive gets to be the hero sending the cure after she's been worn down. It's this use of emotional intelligence that makes the Hive terrifying in ways that a zombie horde could never be. Because despite all the zombie tropes, these aren't reanimated corpses to be mercy killed, unless you ask Manusos. In many ways that matter, they are still people. People who aren't just friendly towards you, they're indescribably happy. This is what makes a huge difference. If they were obviously evil or obviously brain dead, it would make it easier, in a way. And the manipulation coexists with real sincerity and empathy. So, somewhere in between these, the immune develop an emotional relationship with the Hive, with the thing that's also hunting them. In addition to just being morally complex, this creates a bizarre flipped perspective, where, repeatedly, it's actually Carol who looks like the antagonist, where her hostility looks out of place, where her demands look like taking advantage. It's her anger towards these gentle, happy creatures that kills 11 million and alienates her from the other immune. And when she tries to extract information more covertly, she's punished. Like a heartbroken, passive-aggressive ex. The Hive the monster, runs away from her. This pulls a complete philosophical inversion on us, making us question, even for a moment, if Carol was wrong. Which begs the question, why resist at all? Unlike your typical apocalypse, it's not a matter of necessity, but of principle. Rather than societal collapse, the Hive is almost optimally efficient. And actually, it could be a hedonistic paradise if you wanted it to be. Carol could live like Diabaté, fly around on private jets, personalized meals, 8 billion pairs of hands attending to her every need. And each time we cut to Manusos, hiding, living off of dog food, it emphasizes this. It's almost like he's in a different show, the show we initially expected. And it's framed as completely unnecessary, self-inflicted. He is in a different show, and he's choosing to be there as a testament to his conviction. This apocalypse is gentle, and the gentleness of it all is the worst part. Your agency will still be taken from you, but it doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to suffer and scrape by and fend anyone off. You could be comfortable. You could feel cared for. You could let them perform their puppet theater, and you could let yourself believe it. Be the star of your own movie. Community. Romance. You could indulge the Hive's accommodations until they get you. You absolutely could go gentle into that good night. So, what do all of the features we talked about have in common? They're ambiguous. Pluribus takes you from the certainty of obvious horror in episode 1 to uncertain horror. We can sort of see a microcosm of this in the eating people reveal. It feels the most outright horror since episode 1. Found footage, a shrink-wrapped human head? And then, oopsie, we find out it's actually for efficiency, and they have a really good reason, and actually it's kind of sad that they won't feed themselves. Something that was obviously scary is now suddenly weird and conflicting.
Hello, Carol. We're John Cena.
For an obvious zombie monster, you know how you feel about it. Scared. Bad. But the show makes sure you're never quite sure how you feel about the Hive. Are they sincere or are they manipulative? Well, both. Are they human or inhuman? Well, both. And this uncertainty is more long-term uneasy, and it's a great engine for the show. So, Pluribus builds this incredible anticlimax by subverting expectations, which is always intriguing on principle. It's fun to be surprised. Traps us and Carol in anticipation, knowing another shoe will drop, but not when, juxtaposing her rage and her disgust with no monster to unleash it on. And it hides the slightest bit of comfort within the horror, as though the choice to struggle is entirely up to you. It's the classic thought experiment. Is peace worth the cost of individuality and agency? So, is it all about perspective? Is it even an apocalypse if no one perceives it that way?
Perhaps I've not seen the movies you spoke of. But to me, this does not feel like the end of the world.
It's only a catastrophe through the eyes of its survivors, and even then, just Carol and Manusos. If they just joined, everything would be fine. Wonderful, even. If they gave in, would it just be evolution?